France, where President Emmanuel Macron is set to meet more than 200 mayors of areas affected by days of unrest following the police shooting of a teenager. The turmoil comes amid controversy surrounding a fundraiser for the policeman who shot dead the 17-year-old last week, sparking nationwide unrest. Politicians from the centre and left of the political spectrum have condemned the fundraising initiative, which was started by a far-right media commentator. They've called it shameful and scandalous. So far, more than $1 million has been raised for the police officer via the GoFundMe platform. A separate appeal for the family of the teenager, Niall M., who was killed, has raised significantly less. Donations for the family are currently standing at around $215,000. Well, let's cross live now to our correspondent Jenny Hill, who's in Marseille. Jenny, I want to ask you about that meeting that's going to be held by Emmanuel Macron in just a minute. But first, I wonder if you can tell us more about the experience in Marseille, what's been happening there.
Yeah, it's been pretty calm here the last couple of nights, probably because the authorities here, as they have across France, have kept in place measures to try to stop outbreaks of violence. 45,000 police, of course, across the country's streets. Last night, there were helicopters flying overhead, keeping an eye, but very, very calm. And I think the authorities here, as they probably are across most of the country, are starting to think that perhaps the worst is over. No one's getting complacent yet, and we hear here that those measures will remain in place. So public transport, for example, will stop early evening, more police officers on the street, that kind of thing. But I think there is a hope that perhaps those riots have now begun to subside.
It's so beautiful, the scene behind you. Was there a lot of damage?
Yeah, there has been a lot of damage, and we're starting to get in early estimates of the cost of these riots across the country. One business association here reckons that companies have been damaged to the tune of €1 billion nationwide. Within the wider Paris region, €20 million of damage done to the public transport. And I know you want to talk about that mayor's meeting today. That certainly is going to be one of the subjects on the agenda. Those mayors are going to want to know how to pay to repair all of that damage.
And what else are you hearing from the city mayors? Any other suggestions of initiatives that could help? I mean, presumably they want more than just money.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have details of specific initiatives yet, but I think what is crucial to today's talks, and probably the reason that they're holding them, is to try to find out exactly what it was that lay beneath this outbreak of violence. We know what the immediate cause was, the shooting dead of a 17-year-old boy by a police officer. But these riots have really revealed a very profound sense of anger, frustration and social division right the way across the country, as well as concerns about racism and police brutality. And those are subjects which it's going to take a long time to tackle. I spoke to the mayor of Marseille yesterday. He'll be at that meeting. And he himself acknowledged to me that this is a divided city. He said divided between people who are poor and people who are not, and people, crucially, who feel as though the state works for them, who are connected to the state, and those who are not. I spent a great deal of time yesterday in the north of Marseille, because you're right, this looks gorgeous, doesn't it? But this is a city of two halves. If you go to the north, you come across neighbourhoods where people live with significant deprivation and very high levels of gun and drug-related crime, which claims the lives of children every year. And if you speak to people in those areas, they have very little faith in the French authorities. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, actually did visit Marseille just a couple of days before the riots broke out in Paris to talk about a long-term initiative that he announced 2 years ago to try to tackle that crime, that deprivation on those estates. People there say to us, we don't feel like the authorities are helping us. We very rarely, for example, see the police turning up when there's trouble here. We're left to fend for ourselves. And it's that level of disaffection that President Macron and those 200 mayors are going to really have to get to grips with.
Okay, Jenny Hill, thank you for speaking to us from Marseille.